Welcome to Animatronics and Anthropomorphics. I am Gemini or Josh, and this is...
And I'm Blitz.
Hello.
Hello. How's everybody's con going so far? Good to hear. Day one, here we go. Alright, so this is just going to be like sort of a history of animatronics and how anthropomorphics have been largely part of that for a long time. The people, places, all of it, yeah. So, sort of an early history was Disney kind of started it. And the early start of it was when Walt Disney and Wed Enterprises created the audio animatronics concept, when Walt wanted to create a system that was animation but also not on the page at the time. You know, obviously there was no computer animation yet, it was all hand-drawn and painted. So they created the concept of audio animatronics. He went on a trip, I don't recall where off the top of my head. He went on a trip and he bought a little mechanical bird in a cage, and he really wanted his Imagineers to recreate that. The Imagineers, of course, being the team he had that worked on theme parks and hotels and all that for the Disneyland park in 1955. This concept would be fully realized in 1963 with the Enchanted Tiki room, which is still around, as I'm sure many of you know. Great show, one of my favorite attractions. It opened at Disneyland as the first audio animatronics show that year. It was also the first attraction at Disneyland, this is a fun fact, that was air-conditioned. That's how early this was. So, yeah, there's a fun fact. And then in 1964, Walt Disney was preparing for the 1964 World's Fair in New York, and he had 4 companies that came to him to create different pavilions. Ford, Pepsi, the Illinois Pavilion, because they had states for whatever reason at the World's Fair, I don't know why, but... and he started developing human animatronics because until that point, all they had was the Tiki birds. And he had been messing around with he was making a Confucius head. And eventually that turned into Mr. Lincoln, but we'll get into that a little bit later. And then, you know, fast forward to 1971, obviously we're focusing on anthropomorphics. So in 71, the Country Bear Jamboree, another favorite, I Got Henry, opened at the Magic Kingdom, and it would open the next year at Disneyland in 72, and then it would be brought over to Tokyo in 1983. Magic Kingdoms and Tokyos are the only 2 around anymore, unfortunately. Disneyland closed theirs in 2001. And then that same year at Walt Disney World, they created an attraction called the Mickey Mouse Revue, which is actually, not many people talk about that show. It had about 80 different figures of popular Disney characters, you know, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Huey, Dewey, and Louie. The snake from the Jungle Book, Kaa, was like playing himself as an instrument. I don't know how that was supposed to work, but it did.
Disney physics at its finest.
Disney physics at its finest, exactly. And this attraction would close in 1980 at the Magic Kingdom, and then Tokyo Disneyland, when they were building Tokyo Disneyland, the people who built that park, the Oriental Land Company, they took a tour of both Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom, sort of picking out what they liked, what they wanted to bring over. And one of the things they really liked was the Mickey Mouse Revue because, you know, music from popular Disney movies is iconic and the characters are iconic, so they wanted that attraction. So instead of just building a copy, they literally just packed it up and took it to Tokyo. Yeah, and that would remain open until 2008, 2009, and then they eventually closed that. There's actually 3 animatronics from that still around, actually 4. Mickey tours around. He was the first animatronic Mickey Mouse. People often claim that was Runaway Railway. No, it was Mickey Mouse Revue. And they would eventually put Donald, Jose, and gosh, I can't remember the other character's name. They put the 3 Caballeros in the Epcot 3 Caballeros ride, eventually after the Mickey Mouse Revue closed. Sorry for that tangent, here we go. 1974, America Sings opens. Yes, that is that ride. The one that we don't talk about because it killed a woman. Negligence! I won't get into that, but you can look, I won't discuss that because it's pretty morbid, but if you don't know about it, just look up America Sings Incident 1974 and you'll learn all you need to know. So that opened in 74 at Disneyland. It replaced the Carousel of Progress. It eventually would close in 1988, and the building really wasn't used for much after that until Innoventions, and then they kind of retconned it, but yeah, Disney loves abandoned spaces for some reason. Just look at River Country, I mean, it finally got torn down. Anyway, and then later, in 1989, of course, Splash Mountain, now closed. The first one opened at Disneyland, and then in 92, both Tokyo and Magic Kingdoms opened as well. I preferred the Florida one. Anybody here have a preference of which Splash Mountain? They're different, if you didn't know.
Florida.
I agree, Florida, yes. Any Californians? California, you prefer California? Yeah, the music's pretty good in California. Yeah, they're good rides. It's unfortunate they're getting rid of it. I won't get into that, but anyway. And then
another fun fact about Splash Mountain. That's where all the America's Things animatronics went.
Yes, it was sort of Splash Mountain was like a 3-in-1 deal. They wanted to make a log flume. I think it was Dick Nunes, the president of Disney Parks or whatever at that point. I don't remember exactly what he was, but he demanded that they build a log flume, and they had America's Things that had closed in '88, and they also wanted something over in front, Bear Country, because Country Bear Jamboree was the only thing over there, and they wanted another ride over there to make it Critter Country, and that's how it happened in Disneyland. In Florida, they were just like, let's tear out a railroad station and just put it there and move it. In Tokyo, they just put it sort of at the back. And then in '98, we had the Tropical Serenade being Florida's name for the Tiki Room. I don't know why they renamed it in '71 when they opened it, opening date in October 1st, '71, but they're like, let's name it Tropical Serenade and confuse people, making them think it's a different attraction. It wasn't. But eventually that closed in '97, and when that closed, oh, sorry about that, I don't know what that was. So in '97 they closed it, and they would eventually redo it to become the Enchanted Tiki Room under new management, and they put Zazu and, help me with this one.
Iago.
Iago, of course. The two birds from Lion King and Aladdin were joined with all the original birds. I am not a big fan of the show myself, but it has its fans, like Blitz. You like it, right?
And it's the one of the many times Disney decided to let Gilbert Gottfried sing.
Rest in peace, Gilbert. Do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. In 1967, Tales of the Okefenokee opens at Six Flags over Georgia, designed by Sid and Mark Koff. If you don't know what Okefenokee, it was basically like a water ride.
It's named, yeah. So it was named after a swamp in Georgia. This was Six Flags over Georgia, the second Six Flags. Sid and Marty Krofft were puppeteers that did H&R Puff and stuff. I mean, a lot of you probably don't know much about this because it's before most of our time.
I actually know that one.
You know that one? They did that. They were a big inspiration. I don't know if any of you know what the McDonald Land commercials were. That was a big thing that was taken from that. But yeah, they made a raft ride. There was a tradition with the first 3 Six Flags parks. Over Texas, over Georgia, and over Mid-America / St. Louis. They all 3 had a water boat dark ride, sort of like an old mill. If you know what an old mill is, that's basically what it is. Slow-moving water boat dark ride. And the first one was over Texas. They had the Spelunker Cave. It was just called the cave, but the Spelunker Cave. And then in '67, when they opened Six Flags over Georgia, they decided they wanted one that reflected local history, because a lot of these bigger parks that were built in the '60s and '70s, a lot of the time they were focused on theming, even though it was a lot of times pretty light, like it would just be a cheesy name, like Worlds of Fun has a roundup ride called the Bamboozler. That's okay, that's something, I guess, but a lot of times the theming was very light at these larger parks, but Six Flags decided they wanted a history dark ride, and they did one based on the Uncle Remus stories, which of course a lot of people probably presume that Splash Mountain was the first to use those, but it was not. It was the Tales of the Okefenokee. And that would close after 1981 or 1980 because there was a huge fire that destroyed most of the ride.
And the animatronics along with
yeah, it burned. I think there were some singing carrots was the big one. People like hated the carrots. They looked really ridiculous. But the whole scene burned, and then there were various things with that ride. But they closed it in 1980. Eventually it became Monster Mansion. But all 3 parks had a boat dark ride.
And weren't the animatronics still singing as they were burning alive?
I should mention that how animatronics work with audio, a lot of the time how it works is they have a speaker nearby. It's not coming from the character, because obviously speakers back then were pretty large. I mean, we have little tiny speakers now, but back in 1967, speakers were huge. So oftentimes they would be hidden, like under a rock or something. But I'm sure that they were still probably, and they had limited movements. That's the other thing about Tales of the Okefenokee, is that the animatronics themselves were very simple. They had one movement. Like the birds in the middle literally would just do their beaks like this. That's all they did. It was very primitive. But for something that wasn't Disney at the time, it was pretty impressive, I'm sure. But we won't get into much more of that. St. Louis's dark ride was Injun Joe's Cave. That's a horrible, oh God, just don't even.
We don't speak
We don't speak of that one.
Redacted.
Redacted, okay.
In 1972, Enchanted Voyage opens at Kings Island in Happy
Land of Hanna-Barbera.
Kids area.
And of course everybody, I think everybody kind of knows what Hanna-Barbera is. There's no question, they're a pop culture icon. Scooby-Doo, Banana Splits, Yogi Bear, Jetsons, Flintstones.
Everything on Boomerang, basically.
Exactly, before Boomerang went under, rest in peace Boomerang. Who here loved the original Boomerang? You all rock!
You all have class.
Yes, you do. So anyway, when they were building Kings Island, it was a venture. It was actually a relocation of an old park called Coney Island in Cincinnati. And the Taft Broadcasting Company came in and basically purchased the park and decided to move it, make it a big park. And one of the big headliners was a kids area, because Kiddielands were, of course, popular. During and after the baby boom, obviously this was after, but they had a whole area themed to Hanna-Barbera. So you had Yogi Bear's ride, you had the Flintstones ride, the Banana Splits ride. So one of the things they had, the big thing in that area, other than the Scooby-Doo Kids roller coaster, was the Enchanted Voyage, which was a dark ride. I think Arrow built that. Arrow built most dark rides and water rides. But they built this dark ride, and it was themed to just sort of a journey through a river, and it had all the characters. It had a bunch of the characters. There's not really much on it, unfortunately. It closed pretty early. I think they converted it to a Smurfs ride in like 1984. So it really didn't last long, and not much is known, unfortunately. And so then we get into, we've talked about Disney, we've talked about some of the more independent parks that did stuff with companies like Arrow. Now we're getting into some of the other independent companies that specialized in animatronics primarily, not like Disney where they made movies, they made animatronics, they made theme parks, they made consumer goods. No, we're getting into the territory where they're more focused on animatronics. And one of them being creative engineering. Creative engineering is famous for the Showbiz Pizza band, the Rockafire. And basically, they have a long history. They've been around a long time. Aaron Fechter refuses to let this company die. I'm surprised. He's the only one that's left. He's a one-man show at this point. But sort of to break it down, in 1975, he founded the company Creative Engineering. During the early years, he created several animatronics to be in showrooms. I don't really know much about that. Again, there's some stuff here that we don't know much about because people don't keep track of stuff. Damn. But one of the early things he did was the Walt Pack 5, which eventually did become the Rockafire Explosion. It's shown at IAAPA, which IAAPA is a tough acronym to remember. It's the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions.
Say that 5 times fast.
Yes. And anyway, he demonstrated that there. It turned out to be a pretty big hit. And then in 1979, a man named Robert Brock, he started his own pizza and animatronic restaurant company. He was actually supposed to be a franchisee of Chuck E. Cheese's, and then show from 1983 in 2005, I think he sold it. That's in the documentary as well. Can't recommend it enough. And then in 92 to 94, the new Rockafire Explosion was developed. This was a new concept. It had it was an interesting concept. It was like a Carousel of Progress show where it had a revolving stage, and it would have, I think it had Billy Bob, Mitzi Mozzarella, not Minnie, Fats, Geronimo, and then it had Duke LaRue. The characters of the show is Rockafire. Sort of in updated costumes for the 90s. It didn't really do that well. I don't think he sold many or any. I think he sold 1 or 2. The stats are not really out there, unfortunately. But he does still have the prototype one, so at least there's that. Same with the Moonrockers. And then by 1994, all the locations, whether they were Chuck E. Cheese or Showbiz originally, they had all been converted and renamed to Chuck E. Cheese. So all the theming was changed, and I say theming lightly. It was mostly wood paneling arcade games and bright signs. That's about it. But by that point, it had pretty much been converted over. And by 2003, Aaron Fechter laid off the last of his staff, basically just leaving him as the one-man show. He's been running the company by himself, doing pretty much nothing for 20 years. That's pretty remarkable. Props, Aaron. But anyway, between 2004 and 2022, Aaron Fector would continue to, he's actually in the process of moving out of the factory. I mean, he's been in that factory since 75 pretty much, and he's actually moving out. So he's planning on making a museum from what I heard, but he offered tours. I really wanted to go on one of these one time, but I never had the opportunity, sadly. He would charge quite a bit of money, sadly, but he would charge money to give tours to people, which I don't think that's a common thing, and I'm surprised he even let people come in, honestly, because from what I've seen from videos, you can find videos, people took videos of the tours, it was a mess in there, and it still is. There was stuff everywhere. He clearly wasn't very good at organization. Anyway, so yeah, he's basically the last one left, and he's actually not doing tours anymore. He's moving. I have not heard much. He used to have a YouTube channel he would run pretty often, but he does not anymore, sadly. He doesn't post, and he started a paid YouTube channel, so I don't really want to pay for that, no offense. A lot of us don't have the disposable income for that. Anyway.
Yeah. In
77.
In 1997, Atari funded.
Nolan Bushnell, the Atari man.
His pizza parlor and animatronic ideas.
Yeah.
Initially dubbed Coyote Pizza. Fun fact, Chuck E. Cheese was originally a coyote, but they turned into a mouse because the...
First it was a rat, though. I think it was, he was a coyote, then he was a rat, and then he was a mouse. I really don't think something named Ricky Rat's Pizza would have done very well. Smart decision, Nolan. Thank you for not naming it Ricky Rat. That was not a good name.
For Charles Entertainment Cheese, now don't we?
Yeah. With his New Jersey accent and his cigar, as you can see in the picture. The 70s were a different time. That would not probably be okay anymore.
In 1977, first store opened in San Jose, California, with the portrait-style animatronic show.
As seen on the left below in black and white.
And then in 1978 and 1979,
Cabaret.
Cabaret stages created with varying characters. Development continues.
Yeah, so sort of a short little talk about the cabaret stages. They made a few. I have a shirt with most of them on it. There was, let's see, Bubbles the elephant. She was like a circus elephant. She was pink with curly hair. There was Artie Antlers, which is a moose. There was Dolly Dimples is the famous one because there's a fun fact about her. She had a movement to make her, put it lightly, her breasts would bounce, which I really don't know why they tried to act like it was for adults only. They would put signs out front saying, kids, this isn't for you, and it didn't matter. So I'm sure there's kids out there that probably grew up with a weird fetish. But anyway, there were others too. And the cabarets, there were several others. There were the Beach Bowsers. They were a Beach Boys cover band. They were, I think, dogs. There were the Four Little Shavers. They're a very little known one. There were only 3 or 4 of those. There's actually one of those in a transportation museum in Illinois called the Volo Museum. They have videos of the Four Little Shavers. It was a barbershop band that played in, they had an experiment for a while in 79, 80, where they had a ice cream parlor within Chuck E. Cheese, and they would have the Four Little Shavers, and they did, barbershop songs. They also had the, the Beagles was the Beatles, cheesy little cover. They pretty much, Chuck E. Cheese was the opposite of Showbiz. Showbiz had a lot of times their own songs. Chuck E. Cheese's was mostly covers in terms of their content for songs. But anyway, in 1984, I skipped ahead. Between 1980 and 1983, the balcony stage is implemented. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? I think that's seen on the bottom right.
Bottom right, the balcony stages were kind of like were more or less, it was almost similar to the poster show, except for they were like in a...
Very similar. They were a little updated. They twisted more. The portrait shows really only had head movements, and they would kind of lean, but the balcony stages actually moved.
Full-on body movement. The designs got overhauled too. The characters got overhauled.
They swapped out characters. There was Krusty Cat. There were the Warblettes, the Mopsy sisters. There were a bunch of random characters. A lot of them did not last long. I think this is around the time Helen Henny was introduced. She's actually one of the last original characters left. But yeah, they updated the movement. This was largely due to people noticing that the portraits really were not as advanced as Aaron Fechter's full movement animatronics, and Nolan was frustrated that his competition was beating him, so he wanted them to innovate, and they made new ones. Anyway.
A lot of fun fact that is the only time you see Krusty. Now, after that, that man just ceased existence.
Krusty was alive for like a year. Rest in peace, man. You were cool. He was a black and white cat, if you don't know. Anyway.
In 1984, Chuck E. Cheese goes bankrupt, purchased by competitor Showbiz Pizza the following year.
Yep, as said in the slide.
And then 1990 through 1992, Showbiz Pizza locations turned into Chuck E. Cheese with concept unification.
Yeah, so concept unification was what they called the transformation process of the rocket fire explosion into the Munch's Make Believe band. There's actually, I'm sure you may have seen them if you're into animatronics at all. There are videos, demonstration tapes showing you all the steps to do it, and they have this like this music over it. It's like sad, but also kind of a vibe. It's like it sucks because it's such a sad thing. You're seeing these animatronics getting torn apart with slides of pictures, and there's this narrator who is just so bored, and then there's this like sleepy music that's kind of a vibe, and you're like, this is actually kind of cool, but it's sad. But yeah, that was concept unification. Anyway.
In 1993 and 1997, character redesign and alterations.
I think this is when they debuted Cyberamics, if I'm not mistaken. I think
you're correct.
Cyberamics, yeah.
And then in 1998, Studio C stages are installed in new stores and are manufactured by Garner Holt. I don't know if it's still functioning in like the Denver, Colorado area. I don't know if they changed it, but over there by Bally's had a Studio C.
Oh yeah, that's right, they did.
Had a Studio C for the wildest of time. I haven't been there recently, so I don't know if they changed it, but I vaguely remember the Studio C.
Yeah, excuse me. I think Studio C is up on the left there with Chuck. That's when he got that iconic, see this is what I remember because I grew up in the early 2000s. When I went to Chuck E. Cheese, he had the purple shirt, the extreme sports Chuck, you know. That was that era, late 90s to early 2000s. But they redesigned the characters a lot during that time and updated the animatronics for basically the last time.
And then in 2015, Chuck E. Cheese live stage debuted with no animatronics. And then in 2019, mass animatronic stage removals commenced after test locations proved successful. This continues today.
Yeah, and I'm not aware of how many there are left with stages, but it's not many. There's one particular in California, I don't remember where. I want to say it's Northern California, that's like trapped in the 90s, and it has all this really cool stuff. It's a really cool thing. Just look up like 90s Chuck E. Cheese California if you're curious. It's really cool. But yeah, so, and then the pandemic, just to add another note here, the pandemic really killed them. They declared bankruptcy a while back, and just not good. They tried to pivot to doing ghost kitchen delivery pizza. That didn't really work.
Pasquale's, yeah.
They did.
Yeah, Pasquale's, yep.
They did out Pizza Hut. That is official.
I mean, that, yeah, you know, that's supposed. Can't argue with that, but yeah, I mean, personally, I don't think I would eat their pizza delivered. Like, and I haven't been to a Chuck E. Cheese since I was like 12, so it's been a while. Anyway, let's move on. So then we get into one of the companies that's been around forever, Sally Corporation, which they are deeply rooted within amusement park, theme park, animatronic history. They have supplied a lot of animatronics for independent places. You know, Chuck E. Cheese and Showbiz were restaurants primarily. I mean, Aaron Fechter did sell his shows to amusement parks. Like there was a rocket fire explosion at King's Dominion in Doswell, Virginia, for instance. I think a few parks had those, but Chuck E. Cheese did not outsource their shows at all other than their own restaurants. So Sally was sort of one of the companies that actually did sell to other parties. So in 1977, it was founded by two friends, John Fox and John Robb Holland. There's really not much on the early Sally history. We're getting to the point where some of these companies are not terribly well documented, unfortunately, so I apologize for the lack of information, but we do have some details, so that's good. And then that year, John Wood, who is the current CEO of Sally Corporation, he joined the company that year. In 1983, John Fox left the company.
we're not really sure why. It was probably some sort of disagreement or creative difference. And by 1992, they had created this. Actually, recently, this ride was closed. They turned the, if you remember from earlier, I mentioned the Six Flags Over Texas Dark Ride, the Spelunker Cave. Well, by 92, it was in kind of bad shape, needing to be redone. And so they called in Sally, and Sally created for them a Western-themed dark ride, very fitting for our convention. Yosemite Sam and the Gold River Adventure. I forgot Adventure in there. They just recently brought back the Spelunkers as the Spelunker Pirate Adventure, I want to say. But yes, so they replaced that with the Texas River, or Yosemite Sam's Gold River Adventure. And they did several things like that. Like they converted the ride that was Injun Joe's Cave, the one we don't speak about, that had gone through several changes, luckily, by 92, 93. But they eventually turned it into a Scooby-Doo boat ride that was also a shooter, because Sally did a lot of shooting dark rides. And I vividly remember going to Six Flags when I was about 11 or 12, when they still had Scooby-Doo's Haunted Mansion, or the kind of Six Flags version. They made so many Scooby-Doo rides, it's nuts. I remember riding it, and it was very strange, because you sat in the little old boat from the 70s, and there were the pointer guns with the lasers for a shooting dark ride. Anyway, in 2000, they created the Scooby-Doo's Haunted Mansion rides for the Cedar, well, what is now Cedar Fair, what was Paramount Parks. They created a number, I think they created 5 or 6 different Scooby-Doo's Haunted Mansion. Canada's Wonderland, Carowinds, I believe Kings Island had one at one point. Paramount Parks love to clone their stuff. Disney's doing that now, if you haven't noticed. I don't like that, but whatever. And then in 2019, they announced animatronics for a Garfield dark ride for Six Flags China. See, before I did this, I did not know there was a Six Flags China. Apparently there is. And then today they continue to make really cool stuff. I think they're working on a Five Nights at Freddy's ride. They were, I don't know if they still are, but they were. They might have finished it, I think. Yeah, it sounds like they might have finished it. But yeah, that's Sally Corporation.
And
Here's a company nobody knows about.
and I love this one. I know about this one.
AVG.
In 1978, a company founded by
Alvaro Villa.
Alvaro Villa, previously part of Disney's research and development.
Yeah, so he used to be part of Disney, and I don't know why he left. There's nothing on this man. He doesn't even have a Wikipedia entry. There is no information on this man, and I spent a lot of time looking, I really did, and there's nothing on Alvaro Villa, which is unfortunate, because, he did work for Disney, and then he started his own company to do what he didn't do at Disney.
In 1980, the tales of Okefenokee Six Flags Georgia destroyed by a fire.
Yep, and then the following year...
In 1981, Market Plantation replaces Okefenokee for the 1981 season.
Yeah, so there was a fire, as we previously mentioned, in the Okefenokee ride. And for 1981, they brought in Sally to do a new attraction called Monster Plantation. It's now Monster Mansion. I'm glad they renamed it, because that's a really bad name for many reasons, especially in Georgia. Like, come on, guys. Yeah. It was the 80s, but still, there's no real excuse for that. Splash Mountain didn't have that word, but it had other things. The stuff Splash Mountain was based on was problematic, we can all agree. But anyway.
In 1982, Circus Playhouse band introduced at Circus Playhouse and Food Emporium. If you don't know what Circus Playhouse, this one is a little bit. It's a little
bit of lost media here.
This one's there's not a lot about it.
I think we've seen some pictures and videos. I really don't know a lot about AVG stuff. Again, there's not a lot on AVG. But Circus Playhouse Band, the Circus Playhouse Food and Emporium, I think they were a smaller independent. They might have had a few sister locations, but they were not a big thing like Showbiz or Chuck E. Cheese, because what you need to understand is when Chuck E. Cheese and Showbiz hit the scene 77, 80, it exploded. There was a huge market for themed dining. And that trend lasted all the way into the early 2000s. It's kind of died off. Like, people don't really want to go to like Rainforest Cafe anymore, but it did last a long time. And many, 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 many independent restaurants came out of this era, including Circus Playhouse Food Emporium.
The only reason we know they exist is because there's a YouTube channel restoring all the characters, because the ones that came from it, I believe,
Yes.
were caught in a fire.
Yeah, so I think, there's like one or two of them, like one left.
So many fires.
Yeah, that's sort of the, like, if you want to know anything about the amusement industry, especially amusement parks, fires. Just fires everywhere.
Fires.
You know, Roller Coaster 1 is on fire, to quote Roller Coaster Tycoon. Guest number 20 is unhappy. Anyway. Guest number 12 is barfing after getting off the looper.
It's just crashed.
Yes. Anyway, yeah.
Roller coaster too.
In 1983, first Bullwinkle's Family Food and Fun show.
Santa Clara, California, which was also the home of, I think that's outside of Silicon Valley. That's also the location where, this is a side note, where California's Great America is, which was originally a Marriott park. Believe it or not, Marriott ran 2 amusement parks between 76 and 84. They sold both of them. The one in Santa Clara eventually became a Cedar Fair park, or Paramount before that. And then the one in Illinois, the sister park, which was bigger, is still around. That's Six Flags Great America. But yeah, it's just around the road from there. And they opened that in 83. They were a small chain. There were a few. There is a promo video that I found on YouTube of their restaurants, which is actually kind of cool that exists. That we aren't missing that media, which is good. So yeah.
In mid-1980s, Texas Critters Pizza Jamboree chain spawns across 12 locations. There's not one known about that much either, except for all the animatronics popped up by somebody refurbishing, and guess what happened to them? A fire.
Yeah, it's always fire. It's always fire, it seems like.
I don't know about this. It exists. Fire.
Yes. And, we also had the Bullfrog Bayou review at Six Flags Over Georgia. Excuse me. This was this was more of a small stage show akin to like a Rock-afire stage or a Chuck E. Cheese stage, but it was very small. It just had about 3 or 4 characters. This show, there's very little about. You can actually see a still from it on the upper right there. It was a show they advertised. I do not think they sold more than a couple, if not just the one to Over Georgia. I'm not sure. Again, we know very little about AVG, sadly. But yeah, that's the Bullfrog Bayou review.
In 1990s, continued new show ride and charge for several theme parks.
And also, if you want to know another thing they did, they worked a lot with Universal, and they actually created the first attraction outside of a Disney park with animatronics that were like good quality, and that was the Universal Studios Florida wasn't around yet, California. They had of course they have the tram tour if you've ever been there. That's my favorite part of that park, now anyway. They had a segment on that, I think it's now where the Simpsons ride is, that was themed to Battlestar Galactica, the 70s TV show, and it had animatronics in it that were really advanced for the time, and it opened in 1979. It was pretty incredible, actually. That's just one of the things they did. They did several other things. They did a show for the Golden Nugget Hotel in Reno or Vegas, I don't remember which. They did a lot of random stuff. Basically anybody who would hire them essentially got their work. But yeah.
In 1999, the Cat in the Hat ride is created for Universal Islands of Adventure in Orlando, Florida.
Yeah, so I've been on it. It's a dark ride for kids. It's fairly simple, but it does kind of feel 90s. It's a little run down. I hope they do some work on it. That and E.T. and Universal Studios Florida really need work. E.T. I love that they still have E.T. because it's the only original thing they have left, but it needs work. So does...
Never work on it, though.
What's that? No, they'll just let it die, and that sucks. I hope they don't convert it into something too soon, because obviously the ride is the last one that's original. But
At least it's not the E.T. video game, you know the one.
oh yeah, the one I own. Yeah,
What?
the worst video game in history. Yeah, that was, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day.
Rest in peace, the Jaws ride.
Yeah, I missed the Jaws ride. It was really good. I think Sally worked on the Jaws ride, just a side note. And Intamin and several companies, they redid it several times. I missed that ride. It was really cool. Wish they would be that ambitious again with rides.
One of the biggest underwater animatronics ever created that 95% of the time didn't want to
Yeah,
work.
I think they had 3 or 4 different models of Bruce the Shark from Jaws, and it did not work well.
During shooting the film, he had a creative name. They always called him Flaws.
Yeah, exactly. There's a piece of trivia. Thank you. Yeah. But yeah, I missed that ride. Anyway, little side note.
In
2007.
2007, the company go bankrupt.
Goodbye, ABG. You will sort of be missed. I mean, you made some cool stuff. You'll be missed. So now we're getting to kind of the present. You know, in the early 2000s. When I was a kid, I did not like. This is sort of just a side note, I guess. When I was a little kid, I hated going to Chuck E. Cheese. I hated the animatronics. Now I think they're cool and wish they didn't get rid of my 3-stage that was a showbiz from 1983 that was right by my house. Damn it. But anyway, sort of in the early 2000s, we saw a resurgence in interest of the animatronics as a whole. In 2008, they created I already mentioned it, the Rockfire Explosion documentary, which reignited interest in showbiz pizza and the Rockfire Explosion. There had been a small but very passionate fan base around Chuck E. Cheese's and showbiz pizza all along since they had been kind of both gone bankrupt and all the showbiz shows had been taken out. But then the internet really helped get all that. With most things, including this fandom, the internet really helped connect people. So in 2008, they made that documentary. And then in the early 2010s, I was one of these kids. Creepypastas became a big deal. I still like creepypastas, and I think it's the reason I like horror. I definitely got into horror and the thriller genre through creepypastas, but many were created based on Chuck E. Cheese's, Disney, Five Nights at Freddy's. A notable one is they made up, this is hilarious because people always think it's true, they made one on Disney called, what is that one called? I think it's called Forgotten by Disney.
Abandoned by Disney.
Abandoned by Disney, yes.
By Disney.
Thank you. Where they made up a fake, like, River Country meets...
Jungle Book?
Well, Jungle Book, yeah, it was the theming for it. There was this creepypasta based on this abandoned place, and there's this cursed Mickey Mouse costume that's photo negative, and it was so cheesy. They even made a Flash game based on it.
Which is still going to this day. It's called Treasure Island now.
Yes, Treasure Island. So that was another creepypasta. That's one I remember vividly.
The Chuck E. Cheese one is actually based on something that happened here in Colorado, which is enacted.
Yeah, there's multiple different creepypastas based around Chuck E. Cheese. I don't know if there's any on Showbiz. I'm sure if I looked, I could find one. But yeah, they made them on Disney, Chuck E. Cheese's, and then later, Five Nights at Freddy's. Five Nights at Freddy's, 2014, Scott Cawthon released the Five Nights at Freddy's game. I remember getting it on my iPhone when it came out in 2014. I begged my dad to let me pay the $8 to buy the game, and that was that, and I got hooked. I have not played the most recent ones. I think the last one I played was Sister Location. I'm kind of behind.
Same. Sister Location was the last one.
And I feel like a lot of people... The newer ones are bad? Okay.
I'd say the cutoff point is Pizzeria Simulator.
Yeah, Pizzeria Simulator has a lot of lore. I like that one. I need to try it. But anyway, he made those games. 9 games and 5 spin-offs. And we're even getting a movie. Who's excited for the movie? I'm not sure what to think of it, but I'm excited either way because, you know, the Mario movie did pretty well, so we'll see. And, you know, 2014 to now and beyond, FNAF fan games are made to this day as well as more FNAF games. So many games have been made. Five Nights at Candy's is a big one. Those Nights at Rachel's is another one. I kind of always like that one because... Yeah, there were so many. I already mentioned the Flash game based on Treasure Island. That was another one. Freddy Jr.'s, yeah. They made so many fan games. And then we have the movie coming out. So, do we have any questions before we move on to the videos? I have a few videos since we have a little bit of time.
We're in the back. Go for it.
So I've been holding on this question basically the entire slide. I didn't want to interrupt too much.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Why exactly is it called Rockafire Explosion?
You'll have to ask Aaron Fector that. Good luck.
Sounds cool.
I think it's an amalgamation. They mostly had that animatronic band play rock music, so it's probably like rock. And they had, their logo was like an explosion. I don't know if it was in the slide. They had, in the back of the stage, they had a big light up sign that would flash and it was an explosion. Really cool sign. I wish I owned one.
The creators saw a volcano erupt and were like, rock?
fire.
Yeah, maybe, who knows? We can only presume, I guess, until Aaron Fector lets us know. But yeah, that's my answer anyway.
That or he was prophetic about like all these amusement park rides.
That could be as well, because, you know, side note about fires, Elitch Gardens, which, how many Denver, Colorado locals do we have in the room? 1, 2, okay.
I'm a local as of like 2 days ago.
So there was actually a ride at Elitch's. This is really morbid. Elitch Gardens had a dark boat ride. I mentioned earlier that early boat dark rides were called Old Mills. Well, they had one. Most parks had Old Mills. Kennywood still has theirs. It's great. Which was built in like 1926. It's crazy old. It's really cool. Anyway, Elitch Gardens had an old mill, and it caught fire in 1944 and killed 6 people. They had way more deaths than Lakeside. I'll just say that right now. People are always like, "Oh, Lakeside sucks." Maybe look at the history. It's not as unsafe as you think it is. Anyway, you in the front.
I'm kind of curious. You haven't really talked about like the animatronics of Disney Japan.
Oh yeah. I should. Yeah. So more recently, they have. I think that comes down to, see, here's the thing with Disney. Right now they're in a tough spot. They've been in a tough spot for like 10 years. They just didn't really know it, and they've been slowly making mistakes. The thing with Japan and Shanghai is they don't own those parks. The companies that run them do, and they get to request stuff and they fund it. So, for instance, the new Beauty and the Beast dark ride, which is really good apparently. I've never been to Tokyo. I'd love to go because they have unchanged versions of Haunted Mansion and Pirates, and I love those rides. Those are my favorites. It all comes down to what the Oriental Land Company is willing to shell out, because in the US, Disney does not spend a lot of money on their parks anymore, unfortunately. Just look at Epcot. They've been destroying Epcot for at least 5 years. Explain to me how a Marvel roller coaster belongs there. Make that make sense, Disney. Anyway, yeah, so it really comes down to who's funding it. In that case, OLC, which is the reason they're also not getting rid of their Splash Mountain yet. Thank you, Tokyo Disneyland, for always saving the good stuff. Yeah. Anyone else? Questions? You in the suit?
I have a really horrible question. What
exactly
is a dark ride?
So a dark ride, historically considered, is a ride that is in the dark. So you have scenes that are dark, that are specially lit, whether that be black light or specific lighting, like almost like a stage. They set up scenes that are dark but have enough lighting to show just enough of what's needed. It's to focus the viewer on the sets and characters, or whatever you have, animatronics or set pieces. That's technically what a dark ride is.
Usually they're illuminated by a single spotlight,
Yes.
depending on the ride.
Yeah, it really depends on the ride, when it was built, who built it, where it is. There's different ideas. Like Old Mills, for instance, are very primitive. Often they have, like Kennywood's Old Mill, for instance, has really primitive animatronics that do just like an arm moves. Like, there were animated figures before animatronics, but they weren't really anthropomorphized until Tiki Room. But dark rides, yeah, dark rides are traditionally rides that have dark scenes that are lit specifically for said scene, with special effects and lighting. So yeah. You in the blue.
I have more of a comment. But,
Okay.
My friend Travis is the owner of ShowBizPizza.com.
Oh, you know Travis, very cool.
Yeah, he lives in Colorado. And
Really?
He has the original, like, Krusty the Cat and...
I've heard that he has Krusty. Doesn't he have a cabaret stage as well, like some of the cabaret stuff?
I think so.
He
I
used
don't
to.
exactly- He has a lot of stuff. I don't exactly...
Yeah. He's a big person in the documentary, the Rocket Fire Explosion documentary.
Yeah, they are here in state, so...
Yeah.
Chucky and Krusty, of course, for us.
Yeah, he's the #1 resource for most of this stuff relating to Chuck E. Cheese and Showbiz. He knows so much. He has tons of stuff detailing the history. Any other questions? No? I guess we'll move on to some videos. I think we have a little bit of time there. We have 30 minutes. Wow.
Ballin'.
Cool.
Big ups, homie.
So here we'll do some videos.
I can't wait for you.
Was that based? Did you say based?
Yeah, it's based on
Oh,
we have
thank
30
God,
minutes
yeah,
left.
Based.
Based on watching some videos, because we have the time.
Hi, I'm Eric Worth. You know, just one of the reasons I
This
love
is old.
Disneyland
It's from
is
1988,
the place
by the
where
way.
things are- They seem to be. It's a place where
It was Bill Gates.
Star Tours.
real can become unreal.
Yes.
25 years ago, a brand
The
new
80s were
form of
cheesy.
entertainment opened up right here in the Enchanted Tiki room. It was a new way of bringing inanimate objects to life, called audio.
How's the volume? Are you guys, can you hear it?
Isn't that right, Jose?
Alright.
This is Jose, one of the stars of the Enchanted Tiki room. And you've been working here day in, day out since 1963, right? See?
Of course.
Very first audio animatronic show ever, right? See? Did you say anything besides see? You see my voice behind you. See my voice behind you? Oh, it's Wally. This is Wally Bone, the star and
Wally
comedian
Bone.
of
He's a Disney legend, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
He's voiced so many characters.
Don't you hate these one-word interviews? Yeah. See?
Always with you.
Let's. Okay. Wally, take me back to the very beginning of the Enchanted Tiki room, will you?
Okay, let's go back. Oh no, well, 24. Let's go back 24 years ago when I had the pleasure of working with Walt. One morning we went in, we presented our script. He says, "That's it. Let's record it." The next day we recorded it. It's still going here in Florida. The same show.
And California. He didn't mention that, but it is still in California. And Tokyo, sort of.
Wally's Tiki room writing partners, Marty Sklar, is now president.
Rest in peace, Marty Sklar.
Audio animatronics was an idea of Walt's to carry out the animation that he really started in cartoons. And over time, he became interested in taking that out of a two-dimensional form and moving it into a three-dimensional form. So he experimented with ways that he could move small figures. Early on, Walt had Buddy Edson come in and do a dance routine for him, and he photographed.
Something about this dance just makes me laugh. It looks ridiculous.
Fortnite.
Like, what is this? What is this? What is that?
Dude,
Those two, like, are you a bird?
No way.
Jungle Cruise. Oh, God. We don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. We're gone now.
Disneyland called the Enchanted Tiki room, where birds sing and flowers croon and things like that. The New York World's Fair was really a watershed in the development of audio animatronics because all of what Walt Disney did at the New York World's Fair depended on this new process. We did.
Who pets a dinosaur? Just saying, Walt. What were you doing? Mr. Lincoln.
Confucius Lincoln.
Yep. Confucius Lincoln. Carousel of Progress. One of my absolute favorites. I'm so glad they haven't gotten rid of it.
After the World's Fair, played for 5 years in Disneyland and then another 10 years in Walt Disney World. It just closed as the longest running show in the history of the theater. And
It didn't close. He's wrong. It's still around.
That's part of the fun, right?
Yeah. Yep.
That was part of that show.
Fort Magic Skyway is what those dinosaurs were from. They were also later used in Universe of Energy, but, you know. If only those dolls still move that fast. Now they're really slow.
They are so stagnant.
It's kind of creepy now.
That's close now.
For a major show about the Pirates of the Caribbean, which was going to be a walkthrough.
Yeah, it was going to be a wax museum.
First year of the World's Fair, Walt said,
I'm glad it wasn't.
"This is a walkthrough. We learned too much." He had the steel torn out of New Orleans, and we went back to square one and developed the whole idea for the boat ride through the Pirates of the Caribbean with probably
The Wicked
85
Run?
or 90 pirates sacking the town and attacking ships and probably
One of those things that got heavily edited.
Yep. Multiple times, too. I'd argue it's the best dark ride ever, other than Haunted Mansion, personally. It's really cool. Oh, yeah, Benjamin Franklin. Yeah, look at that. For 1982, that's impressive, getting him to go up the stairs.
To a point where the American Adventure became the...
That actually just got all new animatronics recently. They look really good.
It is difficult to make 13 clocks chime at the same time, but we must carefully justify the separation. Dr. Franklin, while you slept soundly through the meeting this afternoon, we did manage to...
Dr. Franklin, while you were a lazy kid.
Country Bear Jamboree. Henry, my man.
Fun fact about this, you can't see it, but Zeb is wearing glasses 95% of the time. The lights obscure his glasses.
Yep. This part's really cool. This is why I chose this video.
But two of the wizards who helped program these amazing figures. Now, how do you make them move?
Well, it's all done on this computer system here, and it's analog and digital.
It's been updated since 1988, I promise you.
It has.
A lot.
Computer records it immediately, and just by pushing a button.
Pretty much.
Eric, why don't you give it a try here?
Yeah, it's Vacation Hoedown.
Yeah, this is actually the update they had for a while called Vacation Hoedown. It was pretty good. They still do it in Tokyo as well as the Christmas update. Not in Florida, though.
We don't get it in the States no more.
No, we did have it in the States during the 80s, though. Yeah.
In some ways, I guess that's true. I tried to supply the technical support that Dave needs while he's
I love 80s music, like, that represents computers, you know? That stuff is so good. Such a jam.
It's now done on a single panel.
Believe they still somewhat do it like this in Utilidor, I'm not sure, though. That was Florida he was in.
In the very beginning, like the Tiki show, it started off with old differences.
Walt was very awkward. Like, watching his old videos is kind of weird, for sure. He was a bit of a sexist, too, so that's fine.
That's putting it like...
Among other things that we will not mention. So yeah, this is the first way they did it.
Yeah, don't ask why he originally wanted to create Epcot.
Ah, Rex from Star Tours, the original Star Tours. It was better in my opinion. I don't know anyone, but yeah. This story's funny.
Where when it went out, with 500 pounds of oil pressure, actually picked up his piano and threw it on one of the other.
That's crazy. Can you think about him just hurling this piano?
That's sick.
But yeah, that's the Vacation Hoedown because they all have different costumes.
Pirates of the Caribbean. Does he ever catch that woman that he's been chasing that one?
Not anymore, he doesn't.
Nope.
It's the opposite now.
It's reversed.
Yep.
And they got food now.
Yes.
So as you can see, the Enchanted Tiki... I guess I better go off. Sorry, Henry. Show's about to start. So as you can see, from the Enchanted Tiki Room to Star Tours...
Rest in peace, Paul Rubens! He was the voice of Rex, by the way.
...has made the world of audio...
Oh!
Yeah, that's kind of, yeah, that's creepy. Oh, there's Maelstrom. I missed Maelstrom, too. That was a great ride at
That's
Epcot.
how I look in the morning, is that like...
Put all those skin back on? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that Maelstrom did become frozen, yeah, in 2016. I was not pleased with that. This is some footage I found recently of Okefenokee that was interesting to find. There's not a lot of footage of it. We'll just watch this one for like a minute. It's pretty long.
While we're doing this, I did have one more question.
Yeah, sure, shoot.
So, I'm pretty new to this stuff.
Mhm.
What does the live stage at Chuck E. Cheese mean? Like, what is that?
So it was sort of a combination of what they're doing now and what they used to do. It was like half animatronics, half like live stage. And what that means is it was like a dance floor, and they would do like they would have Chucky come out in costume, in a mascot costume, and kind of walk around. And he would like interact with video clips on the screens. It was odd. I've only been to like one that had it, and they're a strange show for sure.
They're really weird.
So yeah, this just shows you how primitive the Okefenokee was. And this actually was, I should mention, this was filmed after they redid it. They redid it the first year. And the original figures were kind of scary. For whatever reason, they tried to pull a Snow White's Scary Adventures, and then they had the Croft brothers come in and redo it instead.
Discount Bear, Fox.
Yeah, discount Bear, and Bear Fox, and Bear Rabbit too.
From Wish.
Those ears, there's something about it hitting the, I don't know. Yeah, this ride still kind of creepy, but definitely primitive.
That child is terrified.
Yeah, these kids don't look. Look how many kids there are in that little boat. Like, oh yeah, this part is kind of. The music is a little unsettling to go with the dead smiles. It's like, see, they were very primitive. Like that's all the frog did is just walk on his legs. Like,
How Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey.
Yeah, Spaceballs with the little alien guy. Yeah. I think that's enough of Okie for Nike. Let's move on. This is a Showbiz Pizza Creative Engineering promo from '83.
Ladies and gentlemen, the world's most advanced entertainment has now joined forces with the world's finest pizza.
The world's finest pizza, huh?
That's debatable.
Oh my god.
I apologize for the grainy quality of the video, but it is cool to see it. So yeah, there's the explosion I was talking about. That's his keyboard. Oh god, that voice. Why?
Hey.
Most of the time, Mitzi was actually voiced by a little girl. That's weird to me. I don't know why they didn't just... Now there's Beach Bear.
Holy.
Oh my god, he took 40
Dude,
minutes before the
they need
show.
some WD-40. Oh.
If you were there in person, all you would hear is clickety-clack, 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 because they were powered by air valves called Mac valves, I think is what they're called.
Oh my god, guys.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Done something.
Billy Bob. That is the best cover ever of, I forget what Beatles song that is, but it's a good one. And here's Aaron.
We went to the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions Convention several years in a row, looking for customers who would allow us to use our best talents that we could use to develop for them.
Really discount Steve Jobs, is that what he said?
Yeah.
I mean, he tried to be an inventor. Most of his stuff didn't work. Like I said, he tried to take credit for whack-a-mole, so there's that as well.
You know, that's a really realistic looking animatronic.
Aaron was really a robot the whole time. It was a cover-up. Yeah, he's the Zuck, the lizard, you know?
I heard he owns X now.
Puppeteers in the world, and which one is the puppet and which one is the puppeteer for grabs.
Oh my god, okay. That
Walt to Wolf and Earl Schmerl.
Is he like choking that thing? You got a nice neck.
Shit works real well. Billy Bob is kind of naive about a lot of things, but he's got his heart in the right place. He's sweet and innocent and lovable and sincere, the complete opposite.
He voices Billy Bob, if you couldn't tell already. He actually voiced multiple characters. Billy Bob, I believe. Looney Bird he voiced as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, Looney Bird. I didn't mean to pick one you didn't like.
And we have Fats. Fats is just a winner right from the very start.
Fats has a cool keyboard. I think he's my favorite. He scared the crap out of my mom when she was a kid, too, so that makes me laugh. Big black gorilla, you know.
Because he's really skinny?
No, he's huge. That's his voice actor. And that song is Sal's Birthday, one of the best custom songs they made for the Rockfire Explosion. Birthday memory.
It's really kind of crazy and holds up the crazy image.
I like the cross-eyed motion on Beach Bear where he turns his eyes in towards his nose. That's such a cool touch. I think he'll do it again. We'll see. Yeah, he kind of did it there.
Being developed now as a model for girls and young girls.
Not again! Come on, man! If you've ever seen that cursed image of her with no clothes on, with just the two, like the main supports, like that cursed image with the Earthbound music, that's her. So that's creepy.
The man that does the voice for Duke is the greatest singer probably.
His name is actually Duke. His name is Duke Geppetta. Fun fact.
And his shows, his voice is absolutely beautiful.
Love that costume. That is very 80s.
That is sick, actually.
And the gold tux. That's cool too.
After we finished the soundtrack here in the studio, that show has just barely scratched the surface of becoming a show for Showbiz Pizza Place. From there, we have to take it into programming. Now, that's where things get tricky, because there we have to make the characters look like they are
It's the
performing.
primitive knockoff Disney way to control animatronics.
Here in the studio.
Well, not really knockoff, just other.
Because that means we got to put down each character's body parts every time it's supposed to move. That means if an eyelid moves, it takes a signal.
Don't look at me that way, Fats. Nice doorbells. This line was in a commercial they made that was pretty cool.
We try to hide the fact as much as possible that it is one of the most technologically superior forms of entertainment in the world.
For the time, I mean, you know. Oh, yeah, that's a fun look, isn't it? I bet that's what Aaron looks like inside. Oh, yeah, here we go. Yep. There's the endoskeleton. Yep, okay, I think that's Mitzi because of the ears. I could be wrong, though.
That's not Murphy.
Oh, yeah, like, just...
And holds tremendous commercial potential as far as a viable entertainment medium is concerned. Just like in the
Very true, he
when
speaks
movies
facts.
first came out, and they were black and white, and they didn't have sound. They had to be developed in order to really appeal.
Yeah, I mean, look at how far we've come in 40 years since he made these shows. I mean, we've came a long way. Like, just look at the shaman at Disney's Animal Kingdom, the Avatar boat ride. Has a really great animatronic. If you've never seen it, look it up. It's fluid motion. It's really cool.
Besides just having a technically superior show, we once dreamed that we would be the best animation company in the world. We once dreamed that we'd have our animation out in front of everyone, and that everyone would see it.
I don't know about that,
This
Aaron.
dream has become a reality, and it's becoming more so every day. We're basically performers of art. We're just lucky enough that we're collectively combined with talent for engineering and art and mechanics to make it possible to combine this new entertainment art form for showbiz. We're young, we're excited, we're idealistic, and we really want to see our characters become the greatest entertainment medium to come out of the 1980s. That'll be our niche.
I mean, niche? I'm sorry, this is Sal's birthday. I mixed up the birthday medley and Sal's birthday. It is a really good song. He plays this really cool emotional version of it in the documentary that I prefer, but he sounds like a kid a little bit. It's kind of, I don't know. So yeah, here's some looks at the factory, which is kind of cool to see how it was before, you know, it eventually went under. I mean, it really is a very big process to make these, especially back then. You had all kinds of different people being part of it. You got airbrushers, mask, mold makers, and mask makers.
They're multiplying.
His kneecaps are gone. They were deleted. Okay. I think that's the end of that one. We'll see what's next. Oh yeah, this is a good one. It's kind of quiet. Let me see if I can turn it up. Damn, it's really quiet. Let me see here.
Put on subtitles.
Oh yeah, great idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I really hate how some videos on YouTube are really quiet. It sucks.
Thanks for the H font subtitles.
Yeah, hold on. I'll see if I can fix that.
Cogwheel. Click the, yep.
Holy crap, that window exists.
There we go.
What?
There we go. How's that?
You should have made it the largest setting where it takes up the screen. It'd be funny. Oh.
Is that Pasquale?
Okay, I want to hear the music. I'm going to try to turn it up. Hold on.
It might be tied to PC volume. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Is it coming out of your PC or is
Yes.
It's coming out of the projector.
It's coming out of the, it's coming out of the projector. I thought we had speakers,
I
but
love that.
yeah. You know what? I guess I'll just move on from this video. We'll watch it. Definitely, like if you want it. The song is cool. If you want to see it on your own time to hear the whole thing, go ahead. You can just see the title. It's Pizza Time Theater 1979, and you'll find it. But this is the portrait show. Yeah, Confederate flag. We don't talk about that. Jasper Jowls, you know, the Southern dog.
The most updated dog in history.
We got Chuck Lee and his New Jersey accent. Pasquale, that mustache is just... Yeah. Mr. Munch. He was new around 1979. Another long-living character.
Halfway through this, Jasper's hand falls off.
Yeah, these portraits, I really don't think there's many left because they just weren't good.
I like the mustache.
Yeah, the mustache is pretty cool.
I love it.
I'm going to fast forward because we can't really hear this description. There's a cooler, or, we'll just watch it. It's a short video. Seems like the subtitles are fairly accurate to me.
Real to me. I talk to them.
Yeah, this guy's a bit of a weirdo. The first time I saw this, I was like, okay, all right, cool. I just like these guys, but
Wait, you don't talk to inanimate objects?
No, I don't. I talk to myself, but that's different.
I'm a furry fan, and we all talk to a head that's just made out of like polyester.
Right.
Aren't you talking to a mic right now?
Yes. This is a microphone. I'm talking to myself. I can hear myself. I'm talking to all of you at the same time. So yeah, here's Dolly Dimples with the aforementioned. You just saw a little bit of it. It'll happen. You'll see it again. It's so and see, there's all these kids. I'm like, some of these kids grew up like having a weird fascination with that. Yeah, there's a Chuck walk around. But you see, it goes up and down slightly. The most cursed animatronic ever. Yeah, that was,
The second most cursed animatronic.
There's no subtitles for him at all. That's weird. Okay. Someone didn't do a very good job for this. Okay. Yeah, that kid is like, why is this man talking? Yeah, so it was on this show called Real People, I guess. I don't know. Here's a Sally video. There's Mark Twain and a wizard. They really were, honestly, a very good alternative. Some of their stuff's pretty cool.
Oh my god!
that was kind of cursed. Yeah, just putting the face on. That's cool.
This is a great way to say, please hire us.
Look at that stash. That's only a thing from the 80s. Like,
my god,
that logo too. Like, oh my gosh. Yeah, that was made back in 2017 when they turned 40.
Pull that out of there, okay?
Here we got an AVG video.
Already.
Yeah, I think we're just gonna fast forward.
No. If any, no, put it on 0.25 speed. 0.25. No,
I'm not doing that. We can do it later. We'll do it later.
This would make for epic concert visuals. Are you kidding me?
I don't think I want to imagine anything anymore.
Look at that logo. That is such an 80s logo. Yeah. Look at that logo too. Like, oh my gosh. Like half man, half robot. What is this? Two-Face? Yeah, there you go.
Man, I think I bought the wrong copy of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah, there you go.
What the hell?
Here's the Battlestar Galactica thing.
That's actually pretty dope.
That's actually sick.
The iconic robot voice.
Fired up on.
I mean, that's how they sounded in the show in '78.
It's like the adults in Charlie Brown.
Yeah, like the wah 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 wah.
Bass?
No, I don't vibe with that.
I demand the release of the humans.
A fun fact about this show is it actually was part of, if you've ever seen the Beverly Hills Cop movies, the third one is god-awful, but they filmed it at Universal Studios, California's Great America, and like Axel Foley has a shootout with cops in that show scene.
Based.
Yeah, that's based.
Based.
I mean, you know what? They used it. It was like after it had closed and they were just trying to figure out what to do with it. We're going to fast forward to some of the cooler stuff now because it's kind of long.
Welcome to AVG Corp.
Angry video game nerd?
Yeah, let's just fast forward.
I'm sorry, that's so funny. It goes from an animatronic to just completely stripped away as animatronic.
So yeah, here's the Circus Playhouse band that we talked about. You can't tell me she wasn't a waifu early. Can't tell me that.
Furry bait.
Yep, on the same page as Lola the bunny.
You know the best part of wearing sunglasses?
What?
Nobody can see what you're looking at.
Good point, I guess. And there's text critters, of course. Just about the only footage of this show, pretty much. You can see how the lion is basically the same. Like, they reused a lot of the same stuff. They had a very specific style, a lot like Sally. And we have Bullwinkles, of course. I don't know why they couldn't put the camera closer. I can't see crap.
There's an animatronic in there somewhere.
There's 4 of them, actually.
Oh, wow.
ATG's very own Theatronic show.
Yes, this is the one that they did not make a lot of.
Wow.
That music, oh my gosh.
Los Angeles is Valencia, California.
Valencia is where Magic Mountain
Why
is, by
did
the
they
way.
show their logo so bright?
They're very proud of
I mean, yeah, honestly, understandable.
They're very proud of their work. That's why they have to show their logo like 20 times.
Yes.
There was no premiere.
They were very proud of themselves.
They had to make that shit off of $1 million.
But first, the word from our sponsor.
So yeah, they're just kind of showing their factory. I think we can just
Oh no.
see what's left. Oh, we'll do the trailer for FNAF. You can tell that Scott kind of based this off of. You can kind of tell what he based it on, like a little bit of Showbiz, a little bit of Chuck E. Cheese.
But you aren't here doing that.
And the original first trailer.
Oh yeah, the original trailer. I love how it's in 4:3 too, and this was in 2014. Like, wow, Scott. I mean, it looks old. Like, it's kind of cool, but at the same time, it's like,
The Rowdy animation was epic, bro.
Fun fact there, Bonnie actually gave Scott nightmares.
Yep. And it was initially supposed to be Bonnie that runs, now it's Foxy. Okay, so, I think that will,
Scott the Wasp, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You
just
this game
exposed
sucks.
yourself. God, no, just kidding.
Bonnie broke the magic. He started poodling. That's why he took off his mask.
So, thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed the panel. It was fun to see this many of you here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming, yeah.
I had a lot of fun. I hope you did as well. Thank you. Everybody enjoy their con. Woo!
Yeah.